Hello and welcome to another edition of Razorwire. Now today we are doing one of our interviews. Quite commonly we'll be bringing on board people from Jane Franklin to Jack Jones and so on and so forth who've had interesting careers. Maybe they're, leading figureheads. Maybe they're running some of very interesting companies with very interesting technology. Now today we have an interview with Jemma from CultureGem, who has led a very, very interesting life and has fought a way to where she is. It's a very important story. It's a very inspiring story, and she's a very inspiring person. And I'm very, very privileged to have her to sit down and talk to her about how she got into InfoSec, what she thinks of the kind of industry at the moment, where she thinks it's going, and obviously a whole host of other stuff as well. So and today, for a fantastic interview with a very, very interesting person on all things information security and our continuing interviews of people who are massive in the community to try and inspire people getting into InfoSec, I have the fantastic Jemma. Jemma, do you want to introduce yourself to the people? What is it you do? And then we'll move into kind of the history and background as to how you got in and so on and so forth. But tell us a bit about yourself initially. Who are you and what do you do?
Sure. I'm one of them annoying people without a last name online because, digital footprints and all that jazz. So it throws people in, that way. With me not having a last name when they do intros, which is always interesting. My name's Jemma. I have a few hats, but my day job, security behavior and culture consultant. I help organizations with their security behavior and culture, getting their employees to actually care about cyber stuff, which I do because I love my Nan and I want you to protect my Nan, and my Nan is probably a customer of your organization. And so if you look after my Nan, you look after your Nan. So it all works out lovely. The other side of things is I'm a founder of a company called CultureGem, and we are the first fully accessible compliance e-learning platform where we give you the choice of how you want to learn, in which colour, in which voice, which removes any barriers to learning, which leads quite nicely on to the fact that I'm an accessibility advocate. So I'm out here banging the drum for Manan and every single one of you who fits the world around you as opposed to fits in a world.
Fantastic. So how did you get into InfoSec? Yours has been a particularly interesting journey. Obviously, tell us as much as you're comfortable to say. Tell us about how you got into this game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an open book, so I apologise, and sometimes my story can be a little bit upsetting to some people. So I'm going to include a trigger warning here. So just be a little bit aware that my story was not all fun and games, but effectively, I grew up in quite an abusive, violent household in gang territory in Bristol. So that was a super fun place. You felt warm and fluffy all the time there, due to the nature of my upbringing. I didn't really get on with education. I didn't really have much access to opportunities. When I was about 8 years old, and thought, well, there's no point. I'm never going to achieve anything. This is like the world is set up against me to succeed. I was never going to be good enough. So I thought, what's the point? Let's just not bother instead of trying to fight all the time. I then was taken into the foster care system, which meant that I moved around a bit as a child, from home to home, trying to find the place where you belong. That meant that I left school with a grand total of 2 GCSEs, both in English, so I can write things down and I can read it once I've written it down. Ended up then living on the street, so I was homeless, because back then you left the foster care system and that was it, you were done. 16 on your own on the street. So I worked quite hard at 16 to try and get myself out of that situation, and was working various jobs. I went to a charity, they helped me. It gave me a room in a shared house, and then I had, at the age of 16, 3 jobs. I couldn't afford to go to school to further education, couldn't afford to do my A-levels or such things. Definitely couldn't afford to go to uni. And so I then became a single teenage mum at the age of 17. The bit that I don't very often say is if I hadn't have become teenage single mum, I don't know if I would be here now, because you grow up in a world where nobody likes you, nobody loves you. People that are supposed to like and love you, your parents, don't really do that. So I was really desperate to be loved by someone, and so I created somebody, my daughter, who would love me. So thanks to her that I am where I am, because I wouldn't exist in the world if it wasn't for her, and I don't think I would have had the motivation to keep going had it not to provide and build a life for her. When my daughter was 3 months old, I had 3 jobs and a 3-month-old baby. So I worked in a college on a reception desk in the day. I left college and then went to a call centre where I would ring you up while you were eating your tea and ask you if you wanted a free kitchen design. People would shout and swear at me, and it was loads of fun. And then after that, I'd go and work in hospitality. So that started off working in hotels, making toast for people and things like that. And then as life went on, then into bar work when I became old enough to work in bars. Quite quickly realised that I needed a real job that paid real money, and that I couldn't really be away from my child as much as I was, because working 3 jobs with a 3-month-old doesn't lead to you having a really good relationship with the person that you created to love you. So I went into full-time work in a college reception. Very different from when I was 8 years old and thought, I'm never going to be good enough. I started to think I need to be good enough because I need to support this lovely child that I brought into the world who needs me. So I kept putting my hands up and volunteering for things, volunteering for opportunities. Like I said, I had no real skills. I was a average worker, no qualifications, very little in the way of opportunities, but I just kept putting my hands up every time my boss said, oh, we need someone to do a bit of marketing. I'll learn that. And this was in the days before YouTube, where you actually had to go to a library and get a book and so couldn't just watch a video and go, I'll work it out. There was no ChatGPT back then. So God, I just feel really old to now I've said all of that. But yeah, so I had to go and learn things. And so kept putting myself forward for opportunities. And that was not necessarily because I wanted to, but necessity, that I needed more money, and more money meant that I needed more skills. And then I kind of progressed. The world took me into education quite a lot. As I say, I worked in college receptions. And so I was in the education environment. And that has been a common theme throughout, I guess, my career and even today, really. One of the real jobs that I got was a support worker for adults with learning difficulties. So I taught people who had very little access to opportunities how to access the world around them. So that would be things like recognising coins or how to turn on a computer and write their name. And that was the hardest thing that I've ever had to do. It is no surprise to anyone that does not pay very well, that kind of work. But what does pay quite well when you're a single mum and you need money is sales. So I went back into sales because I've done that before, and you can always go back to sales. Well, I went to work in the local college as a salesperson, selling courses to organisations. Do your staff want an apprenticeship or an MBQ? I don't think they do MBQs anymore, but that sort of thing. And my boss at the time then got promoted to director of marketing, and he did not know anything about marketing. So I said, I'll learn that. I can know about that sort of stuff. I played about with it at my other job where they asked me. So I learned marketing, and I did evening classes. Again, there was no YouTube. I'd wait for my daughter to go to bed and then learn how to do marketing things. Got them a bit of paper that says I know how to do marketing, and off I went out into the world with my marketing certificate. So that is still the only certificate I've got. I think it's, I don't know, some nonsense like level 3 in online relationships or something. Not worth anything at all, but it got me a job. So went into the world of marketing, and I went into something called direct response marketing, which means getting people to do what you want them to do. Manipulation, social engineering, call it what you will, but I'll show you some shoes and you'll buy those shoes. That was my area of marketing. And I was quite good at putting myself in the shoes of other people and thinking how that they would want to receive that information. And I think that comes from the sales and the working in education of understanding how people's brains work and how they digest information and what motivates them to buy. I was in my marketing career and I went on holiday for the first time in, I don't know how long, I think 15 years I'd went on holiday. And I got a call while I was on holiday saying, you haven't got a job to come back to, you're being made redundant. So I decided then and there that I wouldn't keep making other people rich and I would set up on my own. So I decided to start a marketing company. I was going to be a freelance marketing person, full package marketing person. I spent 2 weeks messing about, creating a brand, sorting it all out. And then one Wednesday morning, I got a phone call from an OWASP chapter leader asking me if I would go and organise a conference for them. So I said, sure. And I talked him through everything that I knew in the world. And he said, you'll be great. Let's get on with this. So a couple of days later, off I go to organise the first OWASP. OWASP, for people who don't know, Open Web Application Security Project, global community of some of the top cyber people. So off I go and hang out with 200 of some of the greatest chapter leaders, OWASP chapter leaders around the world. They all flew in to a forest where we sat around and did cyber things. And I did not understand a single word they said to me. So I nodded and smiled. A lot of the time they didn't speak to me because they had cottoned on that I didn't know what they were talking about. But I was in a room with 200 OWASP chapter leaders as WannaCry hit. So this was 2017. Up until 2017, I had absolutely no interest in cyber. So couldn't care less when I was in marketing and people would say, oh, what about the security side of it? My daughter says something that I say now, which is very irritating when someone says it to you, but I find it quite funny to say to people, that sounds like an issue, not an issue. So when cyber people would say secure code reviews, that's an issue, that's not an issue. But WannaCry hit, and I was surrounded by people who were collectively trying to solve cyber with WannaCry happening. And I realised that was affecting my nan. And I'm not okay with things affecting my nan because I want my nan to be happy and safe and I love her. That was the moment where I realised that cyber might be quite important. Was during, I guess WannaCry at the time was the largest incident of its time that we'd ever seen. It was huge. It had a huge impact on real people. And so, that was where I kind of realised that this was a horrible thing. I spent 10 days in a forest with people trying to solve WannaCry. They, again, very rarely spoke to me. But at the end of the 10 days, I thought, I don't know how I'm going to wake up in a world where people aren't talking this cyber thing at me all day. And when I say all day, we're talking 8 a.m. till 2 a.m. It literally was all day and most of the night. And then we'd go to sleep for a little bit and then they would talk WannaCry again. Got talking to someone, one of the people there, who was my first ever CISO now. I said, I've got like this Stockholm syndrome. Like, you've been talking cyber at me for 10 days and I don't know how I'm going to live in the world without this happening. And, 8 o'clock in the morning, cyber nonsense. He said, I'm building a team. Come and join me. I laughed, thought, this guy's clearly gone WannaCry insane, and walked away. A couple of days after that, he left me a voicemail with a job description, and I didn't understand most of what he says. I keep outing myself. I'm sure he didn't know that I didn't understand most of what he said until I started doing the podcast circuit. And now everybody knows I didn't know what he was talking about. So I sent him an email and said, oh, really sorry. Signal was bad. I got your voicemail. Is this the general upshot of what you're talking about? And he said, don't worry about it. Come to London and we'll talk in person. Well, I was very new to having this business. Just lost my job. I've been on holiday. I haven't been paid for my little conference gig. So I got on the mega bus. It was a grand total of £7. Really, really conscious of spending any money because you don't know where your next money's coming from when you're a new business. And so off I went to London and he handed me a laptop and he said, can you build me some Jira custom workflows? And I thought, these are words. I have no idea what you're saying. So I've got on the YouTube, which now does exist, learned it, did it. And so we then did a deal. So I then became an instant response person for a global e-commerce brand overnight. because I organised the first OWASP Summit in 2017. That absolutely blew my mind. But that CISO said to me, event management is event management. You've organised a conference. WannaCry's happened. We've all ignored you. The whole schedule's gone out of the window. You've handled all of this situation. And that is event management, is incident response. It's the same. So about 6 months after that, I became head of InfoSec for a global e-commerce brand because I started to really, really care about my nan and the horrible things that I was seeing on the inside of the cyber team, the types of incidents that we were seeing, which as a consumer, I had no concept was going on, thankfully. And I got really, really angry about all of these things and really wanted to do the right thing. Yeah, threw everything I had into being a cyber person and learning everything that I could learn about it. And then became really, really tired after that point. And I wasn't getting a lot of sleep. I was quite stressed. As a dreamer, I'm a lucid dreamer. And what that means is I replay. I have a sort of a control over what's happening in my dreams. But how that works in my brain is I replay the situation. And when I dream, it's normally a cyber incident. So I will solve that cyber incident multiple times until I get the perfect solution in my dreams. So I wasn't getting a lot of sleep. And when I was dreaming about cyber incidents. So then it dawned on me that if I took everything I know about marketing and getting people to do what I wanted them to do, everything I knew about how the brain works in terms of training and education, and everything I know about cyber, and I smushed them all together neatly, I would be able to change behaviors and culture and get people to do the right thing and for them to care about their own cyber safety, as opposed to just meeting compliance regulations and doing annual training 20 minutes every year. And I guess that's a really, really long version of how I got to where I am.
That is definitely a lot to unpack there, and I think it's a brilliant story and very inspirational. And I can see how all the way down through, even before you kind of officially got into InfoSec, in some form or another, you've been living the way you had to, protect yourself. You had to protect your own security. Obviously, later on when you had your little one, protect that one as well. Sometimes at the cost of your own sanity and health. Any parent has to do the same thing, but you were in quite an extreme situation there. And by the gods, wow! I think that's really inspirational. WannaCry was quite a big one. Let's face it. There's been a few times in the history of InfoSec where we've had big incidents. I was around for the I Love You virus all the way back. You're worried about you looking old. I remember a time without mobile phones. That's how old I am. It's times like that where you really kind of get to see the best out of the InfoSec community. At the worst possible time, you see the best. Because you see people who were arguing bitterly 5 minutes ago about the nuances of defense in depth or the DevSecOps stuff, and all of a sudden you hand them a problem. Doesn't matter what background they come from, who they are, where they've been, how much experience they've got. Everybody has this kind of security switch in their brain, and everyone's on the problem.
Yeah.
And you build your own community out of trial by fire and walking through fire with people. And a lot of people, I think on the outside, when they think about InfoSec, they see it as, oh, well, the InfoSec person has just come down and brought me a load of stuff I've got to do, and I don't want to do it, and I don't want to hear about risks and this, that, and the other. I just want my project to go live. They don't see those times when it. I did a podcast episode recently that's recently released. About what happens when it's a SHTF. When the shit's hit the fan, you see the best out of people, but you also see the worst out of potentially other people around the company. Do you think that was kind of the reason it kind of drew you in, that moment of actually these guys aren't talking complete nonsense? They're actually working through a particular problem using principles that you're probably well aware of. Because your first CISO was absolutely right. If you can run a big event and all the problems that hit you left and right, literally within seconds that you've got to fix, that's pretty much how it goes in incident response sometimes. Obviously not all the time, but when the bad incidents kick off, that's kind of how it tends to be. Do you think that's kind of what set you up, to go, what, I might actually like a career in InfoSec?
I think there are a few moments, but just before we get into that, just to go back to something where you're saying, like you see the best in people. I agree with you. And I think there's so much that you can do in the wake of an incident where you have the mandate to change and everybody comes together. But also cautionary tale, I see a lot of ambulance chasing in that moment as well.
Yes.
And I'm really not okay with that. So
no, I agree with you. I hate the ambulance chasers. It's just like, oh, you've had this incident. Buy our product, and it'll protect you from everything, and including a comet hitting you. Marketing of that nature really annoys me. And then the follow up from the salespeople, it's like, look, these people are in the middle of an incident. The last thing they want is take a call from anybody about anything unrelated to what they're going through, or even partially related.
Absolutely. And the other thing, I don't know if you get these, Jim, but I definitely do, is a load of cold emails. If you clearly don't care about cyber, or you would have read my email. Know your audience, one, because I care more than most people.
Oh, before I started the podcast, I got a lot of cold emails and cold calls. After I started the podcast and we started getting popular, it hit a different level. There's a reason why my PA looks really, really tired half of the time, because she's trying desperately to keep me just focused on whatever's coming through. I mean, again, as the podcast got popular, we started to get a lot more kind of direct emails, DMs and stuff, and it's kind of hard to keep hold of what's going on. But no, I love this community, and it sounds like, that really became kind of like a home for you professionally. You realized, from the outside looking in, we're a bunch of slightly quirky geeks and crazy people.
We can say we're them, right?
Sorry?
We can say it because we're one of them, but definitely.
We can smell our own, so it's all good. But I mean, is that the case?
Yeah, so I guess I have a couple of experiences. So I found my place in cyber, and I always say that, when people say to me, how did you get in? There's the really long story, which I've just told you, but then there's the other version, which is my quick version of someone left the door open and I wandered in, and now everyone's too scared to tell me to leave, which is sometimes how I feel things have gone. But what I realized when in the moments, that sounds like an issue, or that's not an issue, is what I think we're really bad at doing in cyber, and not just in cyber, in all kinds of different roles, is understanding what it all means. It's a communication failure. Cyber people would never say to me, "Oi, this is why." They just go, "No, not for you," and you're naughty. And so I wasn't coming along a journey, which is what I try and do now, is like bring people on a journey and get them to understand it. But I never understood. It's not just cyber, because as a person who's poking things and doing the wrong stuff, I don't know any better, because cyber have never brought me on the journey. But I never asked. I never said, why can't I do it? Explain it to me. But if I had, I don't know if cyber people would have been able to say, don't do it because, these are the reasons. So it's communication failure. But I definitely, in answer to your actual question, which was, have I found my place, and do I belong, and all that sort of stuff, 50-50. The people who are aware of me and have worked with me, or they're aware of my presence, I feel we have this ultimate level of trust and respect. The people who know me, ultimate level of trust and respect. My whole world now is filled with cyber people. The people who I go on holiday with are cyber people. The people I have dinner with are cyber people. So everybody around me is cyber people, and I love them. I love them so much. Conversely, and you and I have had this conversation before, Jim, if I go somewhere where people don't know who I am, which is absolutely fine. I am by no means someone that you should know who I am. But if I go somewhere and I'm in an environment where they don't know who I am, they don't know what's going on, I am quite often spoken down to. It's assumed that I'm in the wrong place. I did a LinkedIn post recently where I said, I was on site with a client, and they said, "Oh, I've worked with other training people." And I was like, I can do the training. I'm not a training person. Like, that's not who I am. And I take responsibility for that, of not saying, here is who I am, and laying it all out. But that's not an overly comfortable thing for me to do. So in those moments, I feel that it can be quite derogatory in the way that people speak to me. Oh, she's just a training person. Oh, she's just a comms person. Oh, that's the human side. In a conversation we were having recently, I walked into a room to run a tabletop exercise, and the group of, unfortunately, white middle-aged men looked at me and said, "Where did they find you?" And that's just rude. Like, there are so many ways that you could ask that question.
And these were InfoSec people.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
As we said before, in InfoSec, you can see some of the best people. We're a very welcoming bunch as a general rule. You want to learn about InfoSec? More often than not, any InfoSec people, most InfoSec people who with any levels of integrity are more than happy to sit down with you and explain kind of what's going on or how to get things done, or if you've got experiences in areas that they don't, sit down and have a pint with them, and you can do the war stories and we can all learn from one another. But there is this element, and I have to agree with you. We did talk about this off camera. There's a group of new-ish comers to InfoSec, as I like to term them, who haven't gone through the trials by fire. I mean, 10, 15 years ago, I had the same reaction whenever I walked in a room with technical people or software developers. It's like, oh shit, here comes InfoSec. Shouldn't you be working the security guard at the front door? No, why do we need a pen test? You're just holding up the project. You're just a complete arse. And worse, I got called all kinds of things. I think that's why some of those early day InfoSec people, who'd experienced a lot of that, are probably some of the ones who are CISOs now and some of the most welcoming bunch. But then you do have a group of them who got in relatively recently, I like to say, and their egos are just ridiculous. They think they're God's gift to everything. And it's like, guys, we're all here to do a job. We're all here to we've all got the same problems. I'm mimicking something that went out as a short, so hopefully it doesn't go out as another short. Why do we need to be at each other's throats? Why are you trying to prove something to somebody who's not interested in whatever you're trying to prove? And ultimately, it just makes them look like idiots.
Yeah, I think it's very strange, and I don't know if it happens in other industries, but I definitely.
Oh yeah.
I coin it cyberlebrities. There's this rise of cyberlebrities of like the egos, and like, look at me, I'm a big deal. I've not experienced it in other worlds, and I would say, yeah, like 10 years ago, I don't think it was here.
I mean, there was a few. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there's always a couple, but it's gotten worse, and it's weird as well. Now cybersecurity has become a really popular part of business. Everybody's seeing what happens when you don't do it. A lot of the stuff that we were all saying for many, many years that was, predominantly ignored or sort of pushed away as fear, uncertainty, and doubt is coming to fruition. And unfortunately, with any popular discipline or any popular area of business or sector or whatever, where you can command good wages, trust me, 15 years ago, you were not well paid as an InfoSec person. Nowadays, the rewards are a lot more significant. And with that comes the idiots. And with that comes the people who feel that they've got something to prove. And I was saying to somebody else the other day on another podcast, I experienced that at the last InfoSec. I sat there at, in one of the bars, just listening to conversations. I'm an InfoSec person. Yeah, I've done social engineering. And yeah, I like to listen to what's going on around behind me and beside me. And some of the conversations was just like, guys, where the hell did you come from? What the hell is your remit? Because it's definitely not an InfoSec remit.
Mm.
And you do annoy these people, and I'll be honest, I do like annoying them a little bit every now and then. I like to prod
it's their favourite.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is why we should all meet up and have a beer and sit at the next InfoSec. And yeah, if any of you are out there watching, come and say hello to us, because we're the good people.
I definitely will do that. So I found that InfoSec, I find it's not just InfoSec. There are a few places where it happens. And this is one of the situations, you don't know who I am and you're going to, where did they find you? I get the same old question. Say I approach an exhibitor, and I have questions about your product. You assume that I've been sent, not because I'm there as a buyer, which is annoying. I don't know. Yeah, I assume I'm in sales or marketing, or I'm on a fact-finding mission. I purposely don't wear a lanyard with my name on. I have it, and I'll put it in my back pocket. I don't wear it. You don't get to know who I am until I've decided that you get to know who I am. So maybe I shouldn't do that. But I think there's a lot in seeing how you're going to react to me before you know, because there have been situations where people have said, "Sorry, who are you?" Or "Where did they find you?" And then I tell them who I am, and they say, "Oh, I follow you on LinkedIn." or, oh, I'm aware, I watched that thing that you did, or I've read one of your pieces. But they will talk down to me and be very disrespectful. I went with CultureGem CTO to InfoSec last year. There were a few exhibitors that I wanted to have proper conversations with. I went and approached them, and they would listen to what I said and then answer the CTO, not directly speak to me. They would speak to the middle-aged man that was standing next to me. And this happened a lot, and their collateral went straight in the bin. No, I don't want it, thank you. No, we're not having this conversation, because I came because I thought we're aligned, but I would never behave in that kind of way. And you have. I get them asking me, oh, sorry, are you aware of the latest password guidance? Like, who do you think you are? Of course, like, why? Why is that the thing? And I get asked this on a ridiculous frequency, which is like, if you want to test whether I know things, at least chuck me a hard one. Like, come on. This is just insulting now.
Again, half of those people are probably, I'll be honest, half of those people are sales. InfoSec people that we don't, I suppose because we're used to kind of getting a certain level of abuse and, people ignoring us. We don't generally do that. And I mean, I've had that actually a few times, not so much recently in the last couple, because a lot of people have sort of recognized me. So they're a little bit nicer to me, but the world is very different. I mean, where do moving on to the industry itself, where do you think it's going? I mean, looking around at the moment, there's a lot of tooling now that we didn't have before. There's vendors popping up all over the place. There seems to be a lot of consolidation. I don't know if you've noticed this especially in the UK market, with bigger companies swallowing up smaller companies with any decent technology. What do you see going on at the moment? Is there a significant shift in the way that we're going to be applying and looking at InfoSec in the future? And if so, kind of where? And what are your kind of predictions for this market, say in the next 3 to 5 years?
Oh, big questions, Jem.
I like to ask the big questions.
Now people will know I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm sure it'll be fine.
Oh, you know what you're talking about. Don't worry about that.
Yes, you're right. There are a lot of steamrollering and buying up of the new and up and coming tech, which is actually, I think, quite damaging to the disruptor market. CultureGem is a disruptor. We get on really well with people that are disrupting, because I love that they're trying to do something different, and the bigger brands don't have to, because they've already got the brand recognition, they've got the clout. So I think someone once asked me, oh God, I'm going to get shot. But oh, do you think LinkedIn are going to do this? And I said, well, why would they have to? Because they've got no competition in the market, and they should buy a tech that makes them slightly better. They like, what's the latest fad? We don't need to improve the way that content's displayed. We don't need to improve what you do on it, because they're LinkedIn. They don't have to. And they're owned by Microsoft. So they really, really don't have to. My concern about, the big boys swooping in and buying up the smaller disruptors is that innovation stops, because you don't have to. You just Microsoft, you just LinkedIn, you just whoever you are. But I do like that the smaller companies are being recognized, and there's people like me that are getting the opportunity to exit, which would be lovely. Like, please offer me a huge sum of money to buy my tech and roll it out to your people, because you might have more luck with that. It's tough being a small business, right? So I'm sort of on the fence on it. What I think we're still doing really, really badly is we're still spending loads of money on tech.
Yeah.
Way more than we should be. Like, stupid amounts of tech and the latest fad. What we're not doing is cleaning up the tech that we've got that we're not using, or the stuff that's duplicating. And then we sit here complaining, saying, we're doing more with less. Yeah, because you've spent badly. And not to discredit anybody who's listening, but when was the last time you looked at all your tech and where the overlap is? Because there might be some sort of module in the thing that you've just spent money on that maybe is already available in this thing that you didn't know about, because you're not configuring that properly. So I think we're not cleaning up in the way that we should be. And that's bad, because one of the things that we're really, really not doing is spending in human risk management, or the human side of cyber, which is obviously angers me hugely. And when I talk to my sales team, I say to them, if it comes down to it, the buyer here is not going to buy us. They're going to buy something CrowdStrike or something Darktrace or like there will be something shiny that they will spend their money on, because I mean, I don't have the actual numbers because I don't think anyone's ever done the research. Maybe we will commission the research. But if let's just generically throw some numbers out there. If 10% of an IT budget is spent on cyber, which is there or thereabouts, less than 1% is spent on human side of cyber, and the rest is on tech and headcount. Yet 97% of incidents are put down to, rightly or wrongly, human error. Yeah, we're going to keep buying tech and we're not going to clean up the stuff, and we're going to complain that we're expected to do more with less. Well, you've spent badly, because what you're not doing is spending on human. You're spending on a tool that does something that you probably already have another tool that does it anyway.
I can't agree with you more on that one. And I think a lot of it comes from the fact that we're still associated with IT people. You know, we're still associated with the IT. I don't like cybersecurity. I like information security. Yes, I'm that old. I like, it used to be called IT security when I first got into it. But I think information security is the right term. Cybersecurity is a chunk of that, yes, because there's technology, and we are a technology-driven society that now can't, literally have panic attacks when we leave the house when we've left our phone in there. We've made our own cross here. We can't fulfill the security requirements solely through tech.
No.
And any traditional InfoSec professional, or who's had access to real InfoSec professionals, because I don't think not a lot, but I think a significant number of CISOs these days have kind of just gone into the role from IT thinking it's going to be the same thing. And it really, really isn't. Security awareness training, monitoring. I mean, there seems to be a really nice little section of InfoSec at the moment coming out around human intelligence. I'm going to be interviewing a few people in that space, monitoring people's activity over a long period of time, and then utilizing, I'm going to say the word, AI, to recognize patterns. So when things start to happen outside the normal remit, then you can make a prediction that potentially there's a problem there that needs to be resolved. And yes, you're still always going to need your defense.
I know who you're going to be interviewing just based on that.
You see, there's a few in this space. We are a
disruptive market. So yeah. No, that's an interesting one on the human intelligence thing. I do think it's interesting, but I wonder how far it's going to go in terms of, I don't know. I don't have any strong feelings on whether it's right or wrong. What I do know is employment law is changing.
Yes.
And so you have to explicitly say, I'm monitoring you. Data protection says you have to explicitly say, I'm monitoring you, and I'll be monitoring you for these purposes, and I will be doing this with it. Yeah, that's the way it works. When you start looking at organizations, for example, who are unionized, they won't allow it. It's going to be, you're going to have to go through a whole union process, consultation. It will be an interesting one on whether it's allowed. And then if you start looking at companies who are under the European Workers' Council, they won't allow it. So whilst I think it's going to be a really interesting world of that human intelligence, where can we spot the insider risks? How is AI going to factor into that? And like I say, I do know some of the disruptors in that space, and they're lovely people, and I've been for beers with them, and they're great. But where does regulation fit into that of what you can and can't do? And where it's the whole CCTV thing, right? It's like we're the most monitored country. Like, where does it end? And when does someone say enough? We're not okay with that.
Absolutely. That's the UK for anybody out there who's not listening from the UK, And you're absolutely right, because one of the key things I learned very on in my InfoSec career is, security is really important, and it's really important to have good security and to review it, as you quite rightly point out, review defense in depth, review your policies, your procedures, how you're developing your education, and so on and so forth. But if you put too much security into an environment, it is going to strangle and throttle people's innovation, the way that people work, and you've got to
create risk.
Absolutely. And you've got to, one of the really difficult parts about being an InfoSec, being a CISO, being a security team is getting that right level of balance. Because if it goes too far one way, you haven't got enough security and you're going to have a breach. Or if it goes too far the other way, you annoy your own customers and you end up having a security breach, or you end up having a wholesale walkout. And it's a tough one. It's a tough one. But we're reaching the end of our time together. And picture yourself when you first got the call that you got your first job in InfoSec. You know, take yourself back to a young you. Maybe you're in a bar having a glass of wine or a beer thinking, when am I going to get this bloody phone call to find out whether or not I got this job? We've all been there. I've been there. Everybody's been there. And then you get that call saying, yep, you got the job. As you did, as you said, you went up to, you know, with very little in your pocket to go and have this interview. If you could walk in as you are now to yourself sitting at that bar and offer yourself any advice, what would it be?
I out myself quite often with this question because I get asked this quite a lot when I'm on panels or when I'm talking to I try and talk to young people because, you know, I think it's really important to share our story. And so I do get asked this question a lot, and I'm sorry, you're going to get the same answer as everybody gets.
That's fine.
Which is, I ask myself this question when I'm on the toilet every day. Right, because I do all of my best thinking when I'm on the toilet. So that's a critical part of it.
Isn't that being a parent, though? You know, you shut the door and just say, "Go away for 5 minutes."
Hide and read a book. Yeah, and then absolute chaos when you came out of the bathroom. But yeah, no, I do all of my best thinking in the shower or on the toilet, and I get really angry about things. And the answer to this is simply Jemma of 20 years ago would not have listened to this person, wouldn't have got it at all. The world seems so impossible, and every day, and I would say it's probably a bit easier today than it has been in the past, but every day of my existence has been a fight, has been a battle. And so to have someone turn up and say, it's going to be all right, or anything else, I don't think I would have heard it, because my survival instincts wouldn't have allowed it. And so, unfortunately, I'm not able to answer your question, but that is the answer. Is there would have been nothing that I could have told myself because I wouldn't have heard it.
And I can understand why. And that's why I deliberated whether to ask you that or not, you know. Okay, fantastic. Jemma, it has been amazing. Where can people find you if they want to come and find you? How do they get in touch with you if they want to talk to you about some of their needs and what have you? So,
as you mentioned, you're in InfoSec, not Cybersec. And so if you go onto the internet, if you go onto any platform and look for InfoSec Gem, you will find me, because I'm in the InfoSec business too. So it's quite easy to find me. LinkedIn, InfoSec Gem, Twitter, X, InfoSec Gem. Medium, InfoSec Gem. Reach out. Let's be best friends.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jemma. And thank you for listening or even watching the latest edition of Razorwire. It's always good to get feedback. Please feel free to reach out to us. You can reach out to us via LinkedIn or through our website, www.razorthorn.com, if you feel that there's something that we should cover maybe a little bit more in depth, a new topic, or something of interest to you or the community at large. We'll even do interviews. If you've got any recommendations or you want us to interview people, we'll reach out to those individuals and see if we can get them on camera, so we can ask them the important questions about InfoSec. So it'd be great to see what your feedback is. In addition, I do have a book recently come out, the Cyber Sentinels Handbook, a primer for information security professionals. Now, this book is very much geared up towards professionals at all levels of their career, be they starters, be they newcomers, be they people who've been in it for a little while and maybe looking for a little bit more direction, albeit the older ones looking to maybe reground themselves in some of the more important aspects of the trade that maybe they've forgotten over time. I've had lots of good feedback from a lot of different readers of lots of different levels, so please feel free to get yourselves a copy. We've got the e-copy, we've also got the paperback copy, and if you don't want to spend any money, you can go on Kindle Unlimited and read the book for free there as well. So thank you ever so much again. Look after yourselves, and we'll be seeing you again soon.